The Ink and Paint Club podcast is intended for mature audiences. These guys can't go about like 3 seconds without saying a swear, so, listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, I had to go grab a cookie.
I want cookies.
Well, go out and get some.
You make a compelling argument.
You're listening to the Ink and Paint Club podcast, your weekly home for animation reviews and discussions.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ink and Paint Club podcast. And hey, Merry Christmas and all that. It's the holiday season, as the kids say. I'm your host, JD. Over there's Kyle.
Where?
Exactly. And over yonder is Matt.
Hey, happy holidays.
Matt's all being PC over here. Being all, look at you trying to be inclusive.
I am.
Well, good for you. So I'm gonna just apologize a little bit here, because I feel like we've kind of dropped the ball when it comes to putting out Christmassy content the last couple of years. We've maybe done an episode here or there, but like really, other than like our first year doing this podcast, we've really haven't done a lot of Christmas content. So we're kind of picking up the slack this year by doing pretty much an episode a day leading up to Christmas. So this is going to start the first of like a 5-episode run of just talking about Christmas stuff. And we're going to kick it off with well, let's just say as the episodes go on, the content gets better. So for our first bit of Christmas cheer here, we're talking about Illumination's take on the Grinch. And oh boy. So listeners, I'm sure I've mentioned this numerous times, how little I care for Illumination's work. And how all of their characters have never gotten out of the Dr. Seuss area of design. But now here they are doing Dr. Seuss again. So I just want to preface this review by saying that there is stuff to like in this,
But not much.
Unfortunately.
Okay, so the way this movie basically forced me to watch it is literally any time it started getting a little bit of goodwill for me, it immediately squandered it. But yeah, this is like it's the Grinch. You know the story of the Grinch. You come out of the womb knowing the story of the Grinch.
It's the third adaptation of the Grinch. They had the classic one from the 1960s with Boris Karloff. They had the one in the year 2000 live action one with Jim Carrey, which is the best adaptation, by the way. And then they have this one, which is doesn't touch the heights of either of those.
Yeah.
I'd say the old Jones one is where it's at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say most people would, but they're idiots and they don't see the genius of
Matt, you're allowed to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong.
No, I know, but I'm not wrong, so it's fine. But we're not here to talk about the good Grinch. We're here to talk about the not so good Grinch from Illumination.
Yeah. So
which is so this is their second one, their second Seuss adaptation outside of the Lorax. And I was mistaken because I could have sworn they did Horton, and then I looked into it and they didn't. It was
it was Sony who did Horton.
Yeah, which I wonder why they didn't keep on doing Seuss movies. I guess maybe Illumination must have been like a cheaper grab at the time.
I honestly wonder if Illumination has a license on it. Because Horton came out first and then Lorax came out a couple years later. So I wonder if Illumination just kind of has like a deal with the Seuss company.
Well, probably now, yeah.
I don't know.
Did you know that this is the highest grossing holiday movie of all time?
I didn't, and it makes me sad.
Also, the highest by association, the highest grossing Dr. Seuss adaptation as well.
Yikes.
Matt, why do you insist on making me sad with these things?
Listen, these are the facts that the people got to know. Like, of course, it made all this money, but that doesn't correlate to it being like quality.
Okay, so how much you want to bet there's going to be a Grinch 2 if it was so flippin' successful?
Yeah, this is something I was wondering because the Grinch has had sequels. Like they did in the 60s, they had a sequel or they had two Grinch sequels. They had the Grinch, Grinch is the Cat in the Hat, and they had a Halloween is Grinch Night. And so now I'm wondering if Illumination is going to turn this into a trilogy and readapt those as well.
I hope not.
Well, aren't they doing a Cat in the Hat?
Are they?
I think it's on their plate right now.
The only thing that I know that Illumination's got coming up is that Mario movie.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm still on the fence about that. But anyway.
I feel like there's enough like input from Nintendo on that one for it to swing the other way. But the other thing too is that it very well may not even happen. Like they got the license now, but I mean, you hear about this stuff all the time. People get the licenses for stuff, and then it just sort of falls into development hell, and then like it just never happens. And it gets picked up by another studio years later. Like
the thing is, usually when movies are in production, you see concept art leaked online and stuff like this. The Mario movie hasn't had anything.
Yeah.
So
sorry, just before we talk about the movie proper, I wanted to point out something. Sure. I'm not sure how much of a deal this would be for you guys because I'm not sure how familiar you are with the content, but I looked up the directors for the Grinch. Mm-hmm. It's co-directed by two people. The first is, I believe, it's Yarrow Chaney. He co-directed the first Secret Life of Pets.
Of course,
we've got some really other good credits on this thing too. Like he was an animator on Cats Don't Dance. He was a background layout artist on the Max. He was a CG animator on Iron Giant. Got a pretty cool resume. The other co-director for this movie is I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with any Kevin Smith content, but the co-director for this is Scott Mosier. He produced all of those View Askew movies, and he like had bit roles in all of them too.
That's funny.
I found that out just after watching the movie and just before we recorded, and it threw me for a fucking loop because I'm like a big fan of that early Kevin Smith content, and when I saw his name, I was just in disbelief. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I can't believe he of all people like co-directed this. Like, it just seemed so weird, like so out of the wheelhouse. Like,
man's gotta eat.
Yeah, I guess so, but like, yeah, no, it was just so bizarre to me. Like, it's just a little jarring when you're so used to seeing one person associated with one particular type of content, and then to see them do something that's like a complete 180 from that stuff.
Yeah,
so
for
weird.
Sure.
Like, this is his directorial debut, of course, as well. Like, I think he might have he's written some comics and stuff before, or some TV or something. I don't know. But anyway, this is his first like directorial credit. But anyway, yeah, that was something that was kind of a big deal to me when I found out. But I wasn't sure if that resonated with anyone else.
That is strange.
So this movie, Benedict Cucumber in it.
It does.
He is the Grinch.
Which I don't know if either of you heard it too, but I feel like he kind of sounded like Bill Hader a little bit sometimes.
A little bit. Yeah, you're right. He did have that sort of. I guess Benedict Cumberbatch's idea of accent is just to emulate Bill Hader.
I guess. But yeah, there were just bits and pieces of this movie that I did genuinely like, and like I thought like a lot of when they try to get emotional with this, like I think it's like I don't know. I thought the bits and pieces where they're like, the Grinch is actually probably doesn't hate Christmas. Like he's just kind of this lonely guy, and he was like an orphan as a kid and never really got to celebrate Christmas or have a family. So that's kind of why he is the way he is. And like when they're having him have these moments where he's kind of reflecting on that and like kind of getting emotional about it. I think that was well handled. But like I said, anytime they do that, they immediately follow it up with something really fucking stupid. like okay, so there's two instances that really bothered me. The
Was it when
first
you
time,
saw full Grinch ass in a pink Speedo?
that's one of them, yeah. Yeah, like at Grinch, if I have my movie in order, like Grinch talks to Cindy Lou and like starts getting kind of emotional after he talks to her, and then it immediately follows up with Grinch twerking right into the screen, trying to do cardio or some shit. But the one that really kind of pissed me off, and the one it actually happens twice in this movie. You like go into Grinch's backstory about how he's an orphan, and like that whole scene is like really emotional, and then it follows it up with this fucking screaming goat.
Oh yeah.
And then it ends the movie that way, where it's like the Grinch has like finally been accepted in society, and he's accepted like Christmas and kindness into his heart. And then it pans out, and you're like, we're gonna have this happy ending, and it ends with a fucking screaming goat.
Well, JD, don't you know the meme, the screaming goat meme?
The meme that was like 8 years old by the time this movie came out.
Yeah, it's a funny meme.
It's a dated meme, as all memes are when they like eventually come to mainstream media.
That makes the children go ha ha.
What kids these days are gonna know the screaming goat meme?
I don't know.
That's like memes my parents know because they're 5 years behind everything.
It's funny because interrupting cow. Moo.
Except it's interrupting goat.
But for whatever reason, that goat just pissed me off.
Yeah.
If it was just like, because it's kind of a funny thing where he's like, he goes out to find reindeer, and it's like, okay, well, this goat shows up instead, and he's like, go away, goat, and it just screams at him, and it just like takes you by surprise, and like, but then once you kind of get a hold of yourself again, I'm like, oh, that's just a really lame meme joke.
Yeah.
And then it keeps happening. I don't like it.
Yeah, like you said earlier, though, there were like some good bits in the movie. Like one of the bits that actually, some of the bits that did make me laugh were, there's a bit where like he's going around the kitchen and he's trying to say like, I thought I had enough, rationed out for the through to January, blah blah blah. And it's like, have I really been doing that much emotional eating? And it like immediately cuts to like the Grinch sitting on his bed with like a tower of spaghetti, just like mindlessly shoveling it like into his mouth. Like, I thought that was pretty funny. There's a gag a little later where he's in the town and like some carolers notice him and they start following him, and like as he speeds up, they speed up and they're singing faster too. Like they're singing at the same speed that they're walking. And like
I've never really considered that Christmas carols could be menacing like that.
Yeah.
They basically get like a very sinister flash mob going.
Yeah,
and just,
they
like sing it at him. Like I'd be a little freaked out too.
They were singing about little Who Christ.
Yeah,
they mentioned Jesus. Is like, is there a Who Jesus?
I wanted to know so badly. I wanted to see a Bible like on someone's nightstand. Like I couldn't believe it because that was something that I don't remember ever. Like obviously not in the original '60s adaptation, that wasn't a thing. But even in the live action one, I think if there was ever carolers or whatever the songs were in that movie, I don't remember them ever being like any of those like types of Christmas songs in there. I think they were like sort of soused up, like fantastical like versions of stuff. And that was another thing that I know that this is something that I remember Kyle mentioned that he wasn't really a fan of in this movie, is that a lot of the elements of this particular adaptation of Dr. Seuss weren't very Seuss-like. Yeah. And I can definitely agree with that. Like but not like 100%. There are like the mechanical designs in this movie are very like Seuss-like to me. Like really anything that like in the later part of the movie when the Grinch is actually doing the deed, like when he's stealing Christmas. A lot of the gadgets and stuff like he uses to like take everything, like they were pretty fantastical in that way. So I really dug that sort of aspect of it. But then like it's mostly the creature design, or I guess like the character design in this movie just seems really pedestrian, really unimaginative. Like really the closest that it comes to, like as far as the animal designs, there's the deer that he finds, like doesn't really like a deer. It kind of reminds me of like a Moomin. It's got like the really big like hippo like face and all that. But
Fred the reindeer.
Or the rain, yeah, but yeah, because he was talking about how like the cats and dogs in the movie are just
I felt like the cats and dogs were just fucking leftovers from Secret Lights of Pets, stuff like that. And then the guy's like, "Oh, I got a dragon." And it's just like, it doesn't feel like Dr. Seuss to me.
Yeah,
not something like a Flurgle Snurp or something dumb like that, where you're like, "Oh shit, what's that?" But no, there wasn't anything like that in this movie. It was very, very odd.
Yeah, and I gotta say that I would have definitely probably not been as critical about that if I'd watched this when it came out, but because I am watching this after having watched Green Eggs and Ham, where they actually like lean into that Seuss stuff like really heavily and do it very well. That like they handle like that's. Obviously, Green Eggs and Ham is like a much better adaptation of a Dr. Seuss property than this is, just for that specific regard. But yeah, that's definitely one of the criticisms against this movie.
Yeah, and I also I want to also say that I feel like just like the actual like I guess you would call sentient character, like the Who's themselves. I feel like, aside from like their weird button nose, like they don't really look any different than from like normal people. I mean, obviously the Grinch does because he's green and has like some weird proportions, but like pretty much everyone else just kind of looks like a normal person. They just have a weird nose, basically.
And man, even the Grinch in this movie just it looks way too soft.
Now I'm not sure if the past two things, because this is what bothered me. The past two adaptations both state that the Who's are so small that they live on a snowflake. Is that correct?
I think so.
Yeah, because that's like in Horton that like they're small enough to be on a dandelion. So yeah.
This one don't make a mention of that like at all, and that's where like part of that Seuss magic gets lost in a way.
Yeah,
and I did like that there's like the original, well, not the original, but the Universal movie. They have like the Who's, and those are normal people, and the Grinch is like some fucking monster living on a mountain.
That he's like a cryptid. Like they treat him because in this movie they just treat the Grinch just like any other Who, but like in the live action movie he's like this fucking cryptid. He lives on Mount Crumpet, and like when you see him in town, they're like scared to bits about him. Like he has to go there like in a disguise to like do his shit. Like
that's where it's like I didn't really care for it too much. And
well, in this one he's got like a neighbor basically. That lives just down like on the foot of the hill from him.
I wanted to say, when he goes to the supermarket, there wasn't even made up like food, was there? It was like just pickles.
I think it was all just like canned goods and just like it looked like I said,
at the store.
It just looked very pedestrian. Yeah, it was like they took another one of their movies. It was like they took Despicable Me and they just threw like a very lame Dr. Seuss filter on it. Like,
and it wouldn't surprise me either, because I know they make their shit very, very cheap. So a lot of that is probably reused assets from other stuff.
Yeah,
probably.
But I want to say they didn't even say stuff like roast beef or beast or anything like that. Was that even in there?
They show it, but I don't think they really mention it a little bit.
Yeah, I was wondering. I think I might have seen when he was shoving all the cans in his basket. I think they might have said like "Who hash," but I think that's the closest that came to referencing like that particular bit of writing.
Right.
If I remember correctly, did this movie make another joke about the rhyming stuff, where they're like, "Oh, we're tired of rhyming. Let's just narrate it some more."
I don't remember them making that joke.
Yeah, I don't remember them mentioning that either.
So I think think Green Eggs and Ham does that joke where they're like, "You expected that to rhyme" or something dumb like that. And I want to say they made the same joke.
Yeah, okay, I do remember that in Green Eggs and Ham for sure. But I mean, even though they made that joke, they didn't stop doing it though. I think in this movie, they didn't even bother really. There's some instances of them rhyming stuff.
I feel like a lot of the rhyming stuff kind of comes with like it's like the narrator will say something and then like the character will finish the line, but so it'll rhyme with whatever the narrator says, but it's not like the character itself themselves are talking in rhyme.
So really quick though, because you do bring up the narrator. I thought I recognized the narrator and I looked him up, and it's Pharrell Williams.
Pharrell. With his big weird Smokey the Bear hat.
Yeah, and obviously he's in there because he does like the sound, he curates the soundtrack, or he does the music for the Despicable Me's. I actually don't know. Like I know he did Happy, and that's in those movies, but
yeah.
Either way, so he's the narrator in this movie, and I don't know that he's a good enough given the script and everything, and just the cadence of his voice and stuff. I didn't really dig it that much because I mean, when you're up against freaking Boris Karloff and Anthony Hopkins did the live action movie, and like their sort of delivery of like the framing for those movies are just so I don't want to say integral, but I mean they definitely strengthen those movies, and I feel like Pharrell's presence as the narrator in this doesn't do it any harm, but it doesn't do it any good either.
Yeah, I mean I feel like this one was very much skewing towards the like almost what I consider what DreamWorks did in its early days is really skew pop culture-y, in the sense of like there's like hip-hoppy music through this and like a lot of like modern slang. So, and I feel like the other two are a little more timeless in the way they approach the story, but in this one they're like just inserting all this like modern sensibilities and stuff, and it's like that's not necessarily a good thing for this kind of story.
No, well, you know what? Because I'm gonna make another Green Eggs and Ham comparison here, because in Green Eggs and Ham, when they did that, it didn't come at a disservice to the content that was presented. Not that I didn't feel that way anyway. I feel like it was good enough. Like if they would have done those scenes in Green Eggs and Ham, like without those, it probably would have been okay too. But the way that they do that in this movie definitely does it a disservice. Like I like Tyler the Creator. He's got some great stuff. I don't like his cover of the Grinch theme. I don't like the end credit scene that he did.
When they're doing like the Grinch theme remix, I fucking hated it so much.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. Yeah, it's not that good.
Things I've heard.
Yeah. Oh, so this just popped back into my head of another reason I didn't like this movie. And it's more of a dig on Illumination as a whole. Is I don't like their
title card.
Their title card for their studio, because not only is it different every time, it just seems anytime I see a new Illumination movie, it just seems to get more and more annoying. Because I'm used to the minions screaming the studio name. I've come to peace with that. But now we have Kevin Hart's bunny character from Secret Life of Pets in there, and it just keeps making the title card longer and longer. Like, I mean, Pixar gets in and gets out pretty fast, and you know, DreamWorks likes to stylize there sometimes, but like they get it over with. But it's like Illumination just likes to take its time, and it's like, guys, just get on with it and stop showing me these annoying characters.
Hey, at least they didn't have Louis C.K.'s character in the title card.
Well, they replaced Louis C.K. Didn't they replace him with Patton Oswalt in the last movie?
I think they did, but not at the time that this movie came out. I don't know that for a fact, but
it's for the second movie.
Yeah. But
that was okay. Yeah. So there was definitely another. I guess it's a bit of a criticism, but it's more of also just like, obviously there's a lot of different stuff in this movie that sets it apart from the other adaptations. Like, I'm not even going to count the 60s adaptation, because that's more or less like just straight up the book. They didn't really add like, there's no filler in that. Like there's
Right.
in the live action movie, they have to add a lot of stuff to get it to feature length, which is understandable. But I feel like the way that they approached it in the live action movie at least was entertaining and like, oddly adult, but like still very entertaining. But even then, a lot of the story beats that they adapt in the live action movie, they're kept mostly the same. They change a lot of that in this movie too. Like that whole ending is different. The very classic scene of like, when he's up on Mount Crumpet and he's looking out over Whoville and he sees them all singing and stuff. And like, his heart grows his heart grows and like the sled is like going to slide down the mountain.
Yeah.
And he gathers up the strength, all like the love in his heart. And like, he hoists it up over his head. And he doesn't do that in this movie. Like he gets helped out by like the deer from earlier in the movie, which
comes out of fucking nowhere.
But I'm gonna say like it's to its credit, it's different, and so it's not exactly the same. Which I guess is I don't want to say admirable, but I mean at least if you're doing an adaptation to something like why would you adapt something without changing stuff? Because otherwise they would just watch the original the original source material for it. But I feel like this is not a good change to make. Like it just seemed a very limp sort of take on that ending. Cause like even then after that part, like that whole ending scene in the original and the live action movie, he like, brings all the presents back down to town and like he's the center of like, or he's at the very beginning of the table, like carving the roast beast for like everyone at the table. And then in this one he just sort of like attends like a small little get together dinner party and like he gives like a little speech about like which is like I'm gonna say it's different and like that's okay, but it's just not as iconic or as as
it's not. But I do think that the way they changed the ending, I mean the very ending, I do think the part where he has to be helped out to get the sleigh off the off the cliff, I do think that I'm not really big on that change, but I do think for at least the story they're trying to tell here, I do think that the whole ending of him returning the presents, kind of explaining like, I thought it was like I thought stealing Christmas would make me feel better, but it turns out I'm just lonely and that's why I didn't really hate Christmas or anything. And then he leaves. And so it's like it's not like the town immediately opens their arms into like and forgives him for the shitty thing he did. He walks all the way back home, and then later in the day, Cindy Lou comes back and be like, "Hey, come to dinner with us." And it kind of gives you a minute to kind of like, oh, well, maybe they're not gonna like forgive him and stuff. But I feel like the whole point they were trying to get away, drill in with his character this time is that like, he never had a family to have Christmas with, and so like I feel like giving him kind of this smaller group rather than like having dinner with the entire town kind of gives a little more of an intimate setting and kind of gives him a little more of that kind of close-knit family kind of feel that he's obviously been craving.
Sure.
Yeah, so I mean you kind of get like Cindy Lou and her family, and then you get his neighbor like is like this kind of like family he's kind of got now. And even I like his little toast at the end where he kind of basically wraps up everything he's learned in the movie. But again, as soon as that moment's over, the goat comes back.
Right, yeah.
Ugh, fucking goat.
I don't like that they have to make a character, what is it? Someone you have to feel bad with. You got to empathize with them now. I don't like that they have to do that with characters. I want to say in the 60s and even the book, he's just an asshole to be an asshole. Then he learns a lesson at the end. In this one, it's like he's an asshole, but here's the reason why he's an asshole.
I don't know. I kind of like that kind of storytelling. They kind of because at least for me, I feel like if I understand why he's an asshole, it allows me to connect more with him. But if he's just an asshole to be an asshole, and I mean, like, what's my motivation for caring about if he learns a lesson or not?
Because
that's just me, though.
I just don't like that you have to emphasize and relate to a character. Why can't you have a character that's kind of just a dick to everybody, and then he learns a lesson at the end?
It's just the world we live in now, I guess.
Well, also, I think
the Universal one, they're like, oh yeah, well, he was picked on as a kid, and that one's like, I can believe it a little bit.
Well, the other thing too is that's giving the origin story for like why is it Dick and stuff. That's just more of like them trying to pad out the story to sort of meet the length of like what they got to do to make it feature length. Like I feel like maybe if they could have if they could have done this movie without having to, if they were doing a short film adaptation of this instead of a feature length one, like they would have gone like for a 40-minute version, or instead like just focus like on the events of the original book and the original 60s TV special. If they would have just done a modern version of that, like it would have been a lot better off.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird that you say padding because I do feel like a lot of this movie is kind of padded out. Just because I was watching it, and I'm like, Jesus, how long is this movie? Because like the whole he's already did the like getting ready to steal Christmas stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, how much longer in this movie? Because like he hasn't even gotten to the whole stealing Christmas thing. The stealing Christmas thing happens like with less than 20 minutes left to go in the movie.
Yeah.
So I feel like even the whole stealing Christmas thing like happens really fast. I don't know, man. This movie just has a lot of problems. There is stuff to like about it, like, and I feel like I can say that about most Illumination movies. Like, there is something to like about it, but it's like on the whole, it's just like, I don't know, man. It just doesn't sit well with me.
I've got to say that for this being my first Illumination movie I've seen, it doesn't make me want to watch any of the other Illumination movies.
And it's really sad because I almost want to say that as far as Illumination goes, this is probably one of their better movies.
Oh.
It kind of goes downhill from here.
Oh.
Like, Secret Life of Pets is... I didn't see the second one. The first Despicable Me is fine. I didn't watch the sequels. Sing is pretty generic, honestly. It's harmless. Lorax is... And that's just kind of how I am with Illumination. Their movies are either bad or
But they make bank.
They do make a lot of money. They make that Minion money. They're making a Minions sequel. It's gonna be like
called Despicable Me 3, wasn't it?
But it's gonna be like a prequel to Despicable Me, I guess. So it's like, it's weird. You could watch this entire like Despicable Me saga. Like the Minion movies are basically Despicable Me prequels, the prequel trilogy.
Yeah, it's like when they made all the Wolverine movies alongside the X-Men movies, but they're all prequels. Yeah, except for the last one, which was actually for. What I'm saying is that Minions 3 is going to take place in the post-apocalyptic world of Despicable Me if they're following the same convention that Fox did with Wolverine.
Wouldn't surprise me. Jesus. Well, is there anything else you guys want to say about this before we go?
What an awful movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch it with the 39.5-foot pole.
That's probably a good way to put it. I feel like when we review something, I could find something redeemable about it and be like, if you meet this criteria, I could recommend it to you. But I honestly couldn't recommend this movie to anybody. Like,
there are better Grinch adaptations out there.
Unless you are real young or you a parent that really need to put something on for your kids, I can't see any kind of animation fan really enjoying this. There's so many better versions.
Just watch the 60s one or watch the live action one.
If it's a remake of an original, rent the original.
So go to your local library and pull out How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
If you stop going to bad movies, they'll stop making them.
Mm-hmm. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I know. I got your reference, Kyle, and I was adding to it.
Well, Matt didn't.
I got it. I wasn't laughing, but I got it.
And I think that's a good place to end this. So thank you guys, everybody, for listening. I hope you didn't mind us bagging on Illumination for the last however long we've been talking. So we'll be back again next episode with more Christmassy goodness. Something much better, I promise. We just wanted to get this one out of the way. So thanks you everyone for listening, and we'll catch you all next time.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Ink and Paint Club podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter to keep up with the show. Join our Discord to chat with us, and subscribe to our Patreon for some cool bonuses. Links are in the description. We'll see you next time.